The British Empire began in the 16th century, under Queen Elizabeth I, as England dreamed of wealth and glory beyond its shores. From London's ports, wooden ships sailed into dangerous seas, chasing trade, discovery, and a place in the world. From London's ports, wooden ships sailed into dangerous seas, chasing trade, discovery, and a place in the world. In the Caribbean, sugar and tobacco colonies grew rich, built on the brutal labor of enslaved Africans. In Asia, the East India Company traded spices and silk, laying the foundation of Britain's future empire in India. The Industrial Revolution turned Britain into the workshop of the world, powered by coal, steel, and steam. London became the center of global trade, as goods from every corner of the empire poured into its ports. British soldiers in redcoats marched across continents, enforcing imperial rule with discipline and power. By Queen Victoria's reign, Britain ruled so vast an empire that people said, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." At its height, Britain controlled a quarter of Earth's land and people, the largest empire the world had ever seen. The Second World War left Britain battered, cities in ruins, and the empire's strength pushed to its limits. Though victorious, Britain emerged exhausted, with little wealth left to hold its vast empire. In 1947, India, the jewel of the empire, won independence, inspiring freedom movements across the globe. Across Africa, colonies declared independence, ending decades of foreign control and reshaping the world map. From the Caribbean to Southeast Asia, new nations emerged, cutting the empire down to fragments. The Suez Crisis of 1956 proved Britain could no longer act as a world power without support. At home, politicians faced the truth. The empire that had once ruled the seas was collapsing. The symbolic end came in 1997, when Britain handed Hong Kong back to China, closing the last chapter of empire. What remained was the Commonwealth, a loose family of nations tied by history, trade, and culture. The Union Jack was lowered across colonies, once symbols of dominance, now memories of the past. Yet the empire left a legacy, its language, laws, and systems still shape the modern world. The empire where the sun never set has long since faded, remembered as both a story of power and of its limits. The Second World War marked the beginning of the end for the British Empire. When German bombers attacked London in the Blitz, entire neighborhoods were reduced to ashes. Families huddled underground while searchlights swept across. The sky and fires lit up the city. Britain fought with remarkable courage and resilience, but the cost of survival was immense. By the time the war ended in 1945, the empire was victorious, yet deeply wounded. Its cities lay in ruins, its soldiers exhausted, and its treasury nearly empty. For the first time in centuries, the illusion of an empire without limits began to fade. The most dramatic sign of change came just 2 years later. In 1947, India, often called the jewel of the crown, achieved independence. Millions poured into the streets of New Delhi and Calcutta to celebrate. Leaders like Gandhi and Nehru declared the birth of a free nation, while the Union Jack was lowered after nearly 2 centuries of British rule. The moment was more than symbolic. It was the spark that ignited a wave of liberation movements across the empire. Soon, the winds of freedom spread across Asia and Africa. In the 1950s and 1960s, nation after nation rose to claim independence. Ghana became the first African colony to win its freedom in 1957, followed quickly by Nigeria, Kenya, and Tanzania. Scenes of cheering crowds, raised flags, and speeches of new leaders filled the world stage. For the peoples of Africa, independence meant reclaiming dignity after generations of exploitation. For Britain, it meant watching its empire crumble piece by piece. One of the clearest demonstrations of Britain's decline came in 1956, during the Suez Crisis. For centuries, Britain had dominated global trade routes. But when it tried to seize back control of the Suez Canal in Egypt, the empire was forced into retreat under pressure from both the United States and the Soviet Union. Once the master of the seas, Britain could no longer act alone. The Suez Crisis showed the world that Britain was no longer a superpower. It was now dependent on others. At home, politicians in Parliament debated how to manage the shrinking empire. Some dreamed of holding on, Others accepted the tide of history. Across the Caribbean and the Pacific, colonies followed the same path as India and Africa. Nations like Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago, and Fiji declared independence, raising new flags while lowering the Union Jack. Each ceremony was another reminder that Britain's global reach was shrinking with every passing year. By the 1970s and 1980s, what had once been the largest empire in history had been reduced to a handful of overseas territories. Gibraltar, Bermuda, and the Falkland Islands remained under British control, but they were fragments of a world that had vanished. The true symbolic end of empire came in 1997, when Hong Kong was handed back to China. On that night, fireworks lit the sky, crowds filled the streets, and the British flag was lowered for the last time in Asia. For many, it felt like the final page of a story that had lasted for centuries. Yet, even after the empire disappeared, its legacy remained. What Britain had built did not vanish overnight. The English language became global, spoken on every continent. Legal systems, schools, and railways left by the empire continued to shape the daily lives of millions. Trade networks that had once served imperial power now connected independent nations, and a new community emerged, the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of states, tied together by history, culture, and cooperation. But the legacy of the empire is complicated. For some, it is remembered as a force that spread technology, education, and trade. For others, it is a story of conquest, exploitation, and oppression. The same ships that carried goods across oceans also carried enslaved people. The same laws that promised order also imposed foreign rule. The story of the British Empire is both one of achievement and one of tragedy. From glory and unmatched power to exhaustion and decline, the empire's journey is a reminder that no power lasts forever. At its height, Britain controlled a quarter of the world's land and people. Its rulers believed the sun would never set on their empire. But by the end of the 20th century, the sun had set for the last time. What remains today is history, rich, controversial, and deeply influential. The British Empire rose higher than any empire before it. But like all empires, it could not escape the cycle of rise and fall. Its shadow still touches our world, but its age of dominance is gone forever. The British Empire may have faded into history, but its legacy is still all around us. Perhaps the most visible reminder is language. English, once the tongue of a small island, became the global language of business, diplomacy, and science. Today, more than 1 billion people speak it, from classrooms in Africa to offices in Asia and the Americas. Alongside language came institutions. Legal systems first imposed under colonial rule continue to shape governments, parliaments, and courts in dozens of countries. Judges still wear robes, constitutions echo old British law, and the framework of governance outlived the empire itself. Infrastructure is another enduring mark. Railways, roads, and schools built under British rule remain vital arteries of daily life. In India, one of the world's busiest railway networks still runs on tracks first, laid in the 19th century. Across Africa and Southeast Asia, colonial railways and ports became foundations for modern trade. Even the empire's old trade routes, once designed to extract wealth, helped build today's globalized economy, connecting continents in ways never imagined before. Culture also carries the imprint of empire. Sports that spread through colonial officers and soldiers, football, cricket, rugby, are now global passions. The World Cup and the Ashes are reminders that games once limited to Britain became spectacles followed by billions. Literature, education, and even cuisine reflect centuries of exchange and influence, blending local traditions with imperial imports. What remains politically is not an empire but the Commonwealth, a voluntary family of nations, diverse and independent, yet connected by history and cooperation. From Canada to India, from South Africa to Australia, leaders still gather under its banner, seeking dialogue instead of domination. Yet the legacy of empire is not simple. For some, it represents progress, language, law, and global links. For others, it recalls conquest, exploitation, and oppression. The empire's shadow is both creative and destructive. and its story is one of contradictions. But whether praised or condemned, its influence cannot be denied. The empire is gone, yet its echoes are found in our languages, our laws, our economies, and even the sports we watch. The sun has long set on Britain's empire, but its shadows remain with us, shaping the modern world. Subscribe to explore how other empires rose and fell, and how their legacies still define our lives today. Every empire believes its power will last forever. Rome, the Ottomans, the Mongols, all rose in glory and fell with time. The British Empire was no different. From a small island, it built the largest empire in history, ruling over a quarter of the planet. Its fleets crossed every ocean. Its soldiers marched across continents, and its flag flew from Canada to India, from Africa to Australia. 4 generations, the sun truly never set on British power. But history spares no empire. Wars, rebellions, and the rise of new nations slowly stripped away Britain's dominance. India gained independence in 1947. Africa followed in the 1960s. And across Asia, colonial flags were lowered. The empire that once commanded the seas was reduced to memory. Yet its legacy endures. English became the global language of business and science. Legal systems, railways, and schools created under empire still serve millions today. Even in culture, the empire left its mark. Football, cricket, and rugby spread across the globe, now passions of billions. The British Empire was built on conquest and ambition, but it also left connections that still bind the world together. Its story is remembered both as progress and as oppression, both as glory and as suffering. From unmatched power to inevitable decline, the empire's journey is a reminder that no rule is eternal. The sun that once never set on the British Empire has finally set forever. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and join us as we uncover the rise and fall of other great empires that shaped our world.